All right. Hello and welcome to the Debt Rebel podcast. I am so thrilled you're here. If you are new to the show, I am Jewlz the Budget Nerd. I am the host of this crazy adventure that we are on with managing ADHD and money at the same time. Maybe add some parenting in there, and we have got the recipe for a wild ride. And so today we are talking about impulse spending. Now, this is one of the most common things that I get asked about. And so I love being able to record episodes like this because, someone has shared with me an area that they're struggling with their money management, and I can create something that's going to be helpful for you. So if that's you, I want to invite you to my SpeakPipe. It's speakpipe.com/debtrebel podcast. I'll make sure that the link is in the show notes for you. So if you have a question, a very specific thing, let me know. I want to help you through it. So today we're talking about impulse spending and why our money decisions when we're managing ADHD are not necessarily about willpower. Actually, they're not all about willpower. So this episode is for you if you find yourself like you pull up your bank account and you are looking through some of those transactions and you're like, oh, what in the world? I don't even remember half the stuff. And this isn't because you are lazy or you're bad with money. And you're definitely not alone in this scenario because this happens to me still. And the problem isn't the purchase. The problem is the trigger, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So first off, what in the world is impulse spending? So it usually is tied to an emotional or neurological response, and it's not a logical financial decision that we have made. So there is definitely a difference between, planning on spending something versus that emotional spending. So, a planned purchase, hey, we're going to go to the grocery store. These are the things we're going to buy. Now, an emotional spend there would be something like, okay, I have had a rough day. I am going to, buy something that brings me some joy. And that also kind of gets tied into that dopamine spending that we can get into as people managing ADHD. And so we can buy things for the thrill because maybe we're low on some dopamine and we're like, this is going to solve our problem. And then there's that convenience spending. That's where a lot of impulse spending also comes from, is it's here, it's now, I'm going to buy that. And so every one of those impulse purchases solves a problem in the moment, which is great, but it sometimes can create an even bigger problem later. And so that's usually when someone says, hey, I'm struggling with impulse buying and impulse spending. It's not necessarily that it's at that moment. It's that it's creating a problem later on. And this is one of the main reasons why people with ADHD struggle with money management and accrue a lot of debt. And I would say this is an area that for myself was a huge struggle. And so we're going to be talking about today those main triggers, but also what to do so that you can move through this and move past this and set yourself up for more success in the financial area, but also managing your ADHD symptoms, because that's something that's not going to be going away. And so I want to give you some tools to help you with that. So some of the most common overspending triggers are things like stress. Okay, so I've had a hard day. Money provides a reward. So that is, that can be a huge stress relief, is like, it's going to get me the thing that I want that's going to relieve my stress. But our question that we want to pause and ask ourselves is, what do I really need right now? So stress is one of those things that causes us to make decisions that we might not necessarily make when we're not under a stressful situation. And so that's why we want to do the best we can to pause in that moment and ask ourselves, what is our actual need right now? So another trigger is boredom. Now, this is a really big one, especially for the ADHD brain. That's scrolling, the doom scrolling we get into on social media, or I find myself on, blogs and all of these things sometimes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I get here? But one of the things is those scenarios are curated. Retailers know us better than we know ourselves, and those ads and those things, social media is designed for us to keep consuming and keep engaging. And so when we find ourselves in some of these areas where our brains are bored, that's when that scrolling can become shopping. Another area that could be a trigger is that decision fatigue. Now, this is a big one, especially for moms, because we are making a lot of decisions a lot of the time. And I would say all the time, we're making lots and lots of decisions. Some of them are very small and some of them are very big. Some of them aren't even our decisions to make, but here we are, we're making them, right? So after a long day, you could just say, you know what? My brain is done making decisions. I'm going to go for the easiest option. I'm tired. So that could be things like DoorDash for dinner. Maybe it's a drive-through, or you're like, I just don't have time to go to the store to get that thing for my kids, upcoming birthday party or something like that. I'm just going to do online Amazon Prime shopping. And then social media. We just talked about that a little bit. There's a lot of things, especially with managing ADHD symptoms and social media, we can get sucked into with comparison or trying to fit in. Because if you're like myself, so much of my life, I have felt like I haven't fit in. And after I got my diagnosis, I was like, so many things make sense. That is part of the challenge of ADHD, is that we can just feel like a square peg in a round hole sometimes. And so trying to find commonalities, and that can really creep into those money decisions we make. So other influencers, or maybe some of those videos that you see and you're just like, my gosh, that looks like so much fun. I have to have that. That would make my family life so much easier. That would be such a blast. Maybe some of those must-have gadgets and things like that. Those algorithms and those things that are put out on social media, those are meant to tempt us. And we know that those are specifically designed to engage us and to drive us to purchase certain things. So another trigger is celebrating the fact that we have survived. So you might find yourself saying things like, I deserve this, or I've earned this, or I made it through today, which are all absolutely true. But let's figure out how to celebrate that emotion without assuming that the reward has to cost you something. So we've identified some of the most common triggers. What do we do next? Okay, so we're going to do what's called the pause method. So you're going to pause. So don't check out for 10 minutes, or maybe it's, 15 minutes. Give yourself a time limit to just pause and not check out. And then you're going to move on to the pause, PAUSE. So pause. And then you're going to ask yourself, what triggered this purchase? Because most of the time, it might not be actually solving the problem. So maybe we are hungry, and maybe we're tired or lonely or overwhelmed or bored. Whatever it is, we're going to identify what that trigger was, and then we're going to seek to understand. So that's what the U is to understand. Will this solve tomorrow's problem, or is it just something in today that I'm feeling and I feel like this is going to solve the problem? And then the next part is to substitute. So can I meet this need another way? Whether maybe it's a walk or calling a friend. If we're feeling lonely, it's reaching out to someone. Maybe it's just pausing and having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. Maybe listening to some music, engaging our brain that way, or reading, organize something, or just sit and breathe for a few minutes. Sometimes that's all we need, is to just sit and breathe, and that feeling will move we'll move past that. But when we react in those moments, that's where that impulse spending can become a tomorrow problem instead of solving today's. And then the E of pause, we want to evaluate. Is this something that future me will thank me for buying? Or is future me going to be happier if I kept the money? That will be a huge indicator of what you should do next. So, now that we've done this, what do we do so that we can build some friction into the spending? Now, this is the sweet spot, because this is what I have done also, and it's very helpful because it builds in that pause framework into it. Because our brains are seeking that immediate gratification, we want to put a little bit of friction. We want to put a little speed bump in there, especially if we're working on some financial goals and managing our money better. We want to put a little speed bump in there so that it makes it a little bit harder to indulge those impulses. So what do we do? One of the biggest ones is to remove your saved credit cards or debit cards from your browsers. Those are huge, or, accounts that you have regularly set up. So for myself, I would have to get up from, say I'm on the couch and I'm scrolling. I'd have to get up, go into another room to get my purse, to pull out my debit card, then to put that in. Okay. Most of the time, there's no way I'm going to get off the couch once I'm on the couch. So removing those things can be very helpful. Sometimes it is just completely deleting those apps altogether from your phone. I know that there is one very popular one that I have deleted and added so many different times. And so sometimes you might feel like, okay, I have this under control and this is not an issue, and you have it on there. And then other times, okay, I need to delete this because this is causing a temptation and taking me further away from my goals. Another one is just unsubscribing from marketing emails. One thing that I like to do is I keep a separate email for those types of things. So when I am going to, shop for something specific, I can just pull up that email address. But if it's all in one and you're managing that all together, unsubscribe. That could be one of the most budget-friendly things that you do, is unsubscribe from marketing emails. And then the next one could be waiting 24 hours before you make a purchase over a certain dollar amount. In every family, this is going to look different, but creating that dollar amount ahead of time before you get into these situations, and then give yourself 24 hours. Most of the time, you're going to say, hey, you know what? That wasn't necessarily something I needed. But then other times you're like, this is, and then you can make that informed, conscious decision and you're going to feel good about it. Or how about creating a wish list? Instead of actually checking out, is just creating a wish list. This is a great one because then I've done this and I look back and I'm like, well, I have met that need another way. And that's the really cool thing, is sometimes we can meet the need another way that's not going to cost us money. And then keeping a running list of your debt payoff goals, because one of the things that our brains naturally will do is when we see things, we're more likely to remember them and to stay engaged with it. So keeping that list visible when you're working on your debt payoff goals so that you can see it often, that's going to be really helpful. Now, one of the things that I want to make sure that we cover is that you are not removing freedom. You are giving future you a chance to weigh in and decide, is this getting you closer to your goals? Because impulse spending starts with a trigger. You don't have to eliminate the spending altogether. We just want to interrupt that cycle. And so small pauses can lead to those better financial decisions. And then that awareness piece is going to be more powerful than that guilt and shame that we have about past purchases. Because when we are informed, or we're making a aware decision, we have to have some awareness about the decisions that we're making, we're going to be more confident moving through that decision. All right. So now we have all this information. What should we do with it? Right. So this week's challenge, I want you to just, for the next 7 days or so, till the next episode comes out, I want you to write down what you wanted to buy, what triggered that urge, and whether or not you bought it. Because this isn't about trying to stop every single impulse purchase. This is about creating some awareness. Maybe we have some specific patterns that we're seeing. When we put a little bit of focus in this area, we're going to be able to recognize those patterns. And that's where the real change begins. Because if you find yourself, it's every Thursday night, you're like, you know what? It's getting towards the end of the week. It's almost Friday. I am ready. And you are, doing DoorDash, or you're going through the drive-thru, then maybe that trigger is, you know what, I'm just tired. It's the end of the week. I deserve to have a nice meal. So maybe it is planning a meal for that night that requires zero energy. Okay. But that's going to fit your budget. So when we have that kind of awareness and we can recognize those patterns, that's where we can create that real lasting change in our budget and to spend our money with what aligns most with our goals and our families. I hope that this episode was helpful for you, and I would love it. I'm going to put that link in the show notes. But if you go to my SpeakPipe and just record a message, whether it's a question, or I would love to know what is one thing that you always overspend on, so we can talk about that and create some ways so that is an area that you're not overspending anymore. So I would love to hear from you. You can also find the SpeakPipe link on my website, debtrebelpodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening. I know that you have options on where you put your attention, and so I appreciate that you have spent a few minutes with me and working on increasing your financial literacy and supporting your brain and your family in a way that is healthier for you. All right. We'll talk to you soon.